call the country's largest and most brazen corruption scandal. This as Malacanang appeals for patience amid criticisms over the slow pace of government action on corruption cases. Butch Guerrero, Governor of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines and Director of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, joins us for more. President Marcos orders a price freeze on all basic commodities until the end of the year. And the Philippine peso sinks to its lowest in 10 months as the Philippine Stock Exchange Index drops to a 7-month low on Monday. Cristina Ulang, research head at First Metro Investment Corporation, joins us for more. The 47th ASEAN Summit is wrapping up today after 3 days of high-level discussions on maritime security, climate cooperation, and economic integration, among others. For updates, we now go live to our mobile journalist, Julie Paisa, reporting live from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Very good morning, Julie. What should we expect on the final day of the summit?
Yes, Cathy, it's the final day of the 47th ASEAN Summit and related summits here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Today, Malaysia will officially hand over the ASEAN chairmanship to the Philippines, which will lead the regional bloc next year. But before the turnover, President Bongbong Marcos attended a series of high-level meetings yesterday. President Marcos' remarks during the summit centered on the West Philippine Sea issue. In the presence of U.S. President Donald Trump, the president strongly condemned the continued harassment, dangerous maneuvers, and obstruction of the Philippines' legitimate activities in the West Philippine Sea. The president also raised concern over the declaration of a nature reserve in Bajo de Masinloc, calling it a clear violation of the Philippine sovereignty and of the traditional fishing rights of Filipinos under the 1982 UNCLOS and the 2016 arbitral ruling. While President Marcos did not name any country, the Philippines has recently protested several incidents of harassment by China. Meanwhile, Malacanang has responded to the accusations of Davao Representative Pulong Duterte against AFP Chief of Staff General Romeo Browner Jr., who was alleged to be advancing U.S. interests following the deployment of the U.S. mid-range missile system in the country. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro mentioned that PCG Commodore J. Tariela said that such narratives is pro-China. He also challenged the Duterte camp to speak out whenever Chinese Coast Guard ships attack Philippine vessels with water cannons. Malacanang also clarified the controversy surrounding the ASEAN leaders' photo where President Marcos was noticeably absent. Castro explained that the president was still in an extended meeting with the United Nations at that time. He wasn't present during the photo opportunity, but he did attend the summit. Cathy, the palace also assured the business group who criticized authorities for being content with merely issuing lookout bulletin instead of whole departure orders against those involved in corruption. Castro said a lot has already happened since the last SONA in July, and whole departures orders cannot be issued arbitrarily. Cathy?
Yeah, the Philippines is going to have the chance to raise the flag when it hosts ASEAN next year. What's being done to prepare for that, Julie? What sort of conversations are we getting right now?
Cathy, the Presidential Communications Office briefed us yesterday about where would possibly be the venue for next ASEAN. What are the preparations, including the media coverages? This ASEAN Summit 2025, around 3,200 media entities attended and covered. So the president is palace rather is preparing for that kind of coverages and how to secure the safety of the leaders.
Indeed, it'll be a challenge and an opportunity as well. Thank you so much. Mobile journalist Julie Paisa reporting from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. The Philippine economy is expected to stay on track this year despite global headwinds and domestic political uncertainty. Fitch Ratings has kept its growth forecast at 5.6% for 2025 within the government's 5.5% to 6.5% target. The credit rater said this is driven by infrastructure spending, remittances, and services exports. It also said easing inflation and lower interest rates will help sustain private demand, but warned that political uncertainty and global trade tensions could weigh on investments. For his part, Budget Undersecretary Joselito Basilio said third quarter GDP is likely still within target. The third quarter GDP data will be released on November 7th. Philippine business and labor leaders call on President Marcos to firmly and fearlessly lead from the front in confronting what they call the country's largest and most brazen corruption scandal. With us now for more is Butch Guerrero, Governor of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines and Director of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Good seeing you again, Butch. Welcome back to the program.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to all your viewers.
So what led the business groups and labor groups to come out with this joint letter to the president? Was there a specific trigger or triggers?
Actually, the business group have released several anti-corruption statements already. However, the labor groups have none. And they called us and they requested that we release a joint statement between labor leaders, labor groups, and the business community. And after meeting several times, we forged an agreement that we would release with what is happening in this kind of brazen corruption that besiege our country right now.
What was the key concern of the labor leaders to come and want a joint press statement right now with the business leaders?
The main cause is that they are being pressured by their members because collectively the trade union groups and the labor, which we call the labor groups, have a lot of members in thousands and hundreds of thousands, and a lot of questions are being delivered to them that they have not released any statement yet. And that urged them to call the business community, the business leaders, as most of us sit on the National Tripartite Industrial Peace Council. And we decided to release a common statement. For once that business and labor would agree. Most of the time we don't we disagree and we don't see eye to eye. But in this case, these are the very, very rare times that we agree, Cathy.
Indeed, that's what I was getting to. You normally don't agree, so this joint statement is very significant. So could you point out to us exactly what points made you agree to release a joint statement this round?
Well, number one, our employees, which earns the minimum wage, and their members who also earns the minimum wage, which represents around 5 million of the working population out of the 49 million 49 million total working population, is a significant part of the country. And they don't have any chance to fight this corruption because automatically taxes are withheld from them, and the business community is also being withheld taxes, that we are obligated to pay taxes. And we want the taxes that we worked hard for, both groups, labor and business, to put into good use. And with this brazen in the Senate announcements, investigations, we were all surprised. And in the previous interview, I used the word aghast. And in this case, it's affecting the business community because several months back, before this started in September, we were receiving a lot of visitors interested to invest in the Philippines. And now, nobody's visiting us. And we are really alarmed. And the dollar continues to increase versus the Philippine peso. And investments are waning. And there is now a mass movement on November 30 that seeks to have several objectives that might disrupt government. And we don't agree to these disruptions, and it would affect business. And so labor as well would affect their our work because we are under the presumption that if there is any disruption, people would stop earning on both sides, business and labor.
Let me pick up on the investors. As you mentioned, they've stopped coming. What sort of conversations have you had with those who have pulled back and decided not to invest or come around and visit this time around? What are their concerns?
Well, they did not set any concern to us. They just stopped coming in, they just stopped scheduling visits to the country without any reasons. But we all know what the reason is.
If disruption is so much of a concern because business would prefer continuity, what then are you hoping would be the best outcome, if not a disruption on November 30th?
The best outcome would, if there is a move, a bold move from government, that this thing is serious and we're demanding that there will be reforms in the budget process, reforms in the way we're handling this through the ICI, and actually in the previous releases that we have, prosecutions. I know the palace said that you have to go through the due process, but I think not all understand what due process is, and they're very what do you call this, Cathy? They're very impatient that nothing is happening and nothing is being well being done on the prosecution side.
Well, let's listen to that exactly what you said, Claire Castro said, and she said it in the vernacular. Maybe there could be more understanding because Malacanang has appealed for patience amid all these criticisms. Let's listen to this.
Sa mga naiinit, ang pamahalaan po ay nasa tamang pagkilos na naaayon sa batas. Nagmamadali, yes, minamadali lahat, pero hindi natin mamamadali ang lahat, pero mag-violate tayo ng batas at ng human rights.
Are you willing to give the government some slack?
Definitely, definitely. But it's our members and the workers. That's why labor and business are now agreeing that we need to speed up things on what is happening at the national level. I agree with the palace that there has to be due process, and we respect that. But in this case, there are a lot of clamor from our members and from the workers that the due process being said is not as fast as we were expecting to happen.
Well, it's a long laundry list that you're demanding from the president, and I wanted to show our viewers and streamers here exactly what you're asking for. A repetition of the first, in the first discussion we had when you described as aghast the situation we face. But which one among them is of utmost priority?
Well, the utmost priority is to say to the people, especially our members and the labor groups, that something is happening. There would be milestones or bold steps that would happen, or prosecutions, or significant moves in the judicial system, because we all know that the people involved have the cash, have the right to employ very good lawyers, and most of them are in power. So what we are afraid of, what they're telling us, is that all might be set free, all would be acquitted, and life goes on. And if this goes on, we've discussed that the value system of our country might be in jeopardy, and this might affect not only us, but the next generation that would take over. Cathy?
Just as a final point, Butch, what's in front of us right now is the 2026 national budget. And that's something where we could probably help and make a change for if you're calling for changes and reforms. What do you all so far make of the budget, from the National Expenditure Plan to the General Appropriations Bill as it now gets deliberated in the Senate?
We're talking about insertions, because if you're approving a budget in the private sector, everything is above board. But however, once the budget is approved and once it passes through the bicameral process, they now start inserting expenses into the budget. And if it's a few millions of pesos, that's okay. But they're inserting billions and billions. So we are, this is not normally done in any private business. Everything is above board. So if you really want to insert, why don't you insert it before the project process and not after? So that's what the business community is expecting. And second, we need to monitor whatever these projects are so that we would see if they're being carried out or not. Just like in the private sector, we properly monitor the projection of our expenses and the budgets on hand.
All right, a lot more challenges to conquer there. Butch Guerrero, thank you so much for the update. I much appreciate it from ECOP and PCCI. Well, President Marcos has ordered the Trade Department to freeze prices of basic and prime commodities until the end of the year to keep costs stable during the holiday season. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said the directive follows the president's instruction to strictly enforce suggested retail prices for imported rice and other essentials. She also said that Trade Secretary Cristina Roque has coordinated with manufacturers to maintain prices and prevent unwarranted hikes. Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation is set to reactivate its Biyaheng Arrancada program beginning tomorrow to ensure safe and smooth travel this Undas. The motor assistance program that will run until Monday, November 3rd, includes round-the-clock traffic monitoring, quick response teams, and the deployment of around 2,000 personnel across all MPTC expressways. Free towing for Class 1 vehicles will be available from 6 a.m. on October 30 to 6 a.m. on November 3, while roadworks will be suspended to ease traffic flow. The tollway operator said motorists can use the MPT Drive Hub app for real-time updates, RFID reloading, and assistance. It will also offer free Wi-Fi, charging stations, and bottled water in select areas. MPTC urges travelers to plan ahead and avoid peak hours from Wednesday through Friday and November 1 to 3. MPTC and Signal, the owner of this channel, are both part of the MVP Group. You're watching Money Talks. Meralco's nine-month profit is up 14%, led by its power generation business. We speak to Cristina Ulang, First Metro Investment Corporation. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Constructive talks between U.S. and China lifted the markets yesterday, Monday. The Nasdaq rose by nearly 2%. S&P 500 climbed by about 1.25%, and the Dow gained by 0.7%. The benchmark 10-year Treasury yields slipped to 3.994%. Gold prices declined by nearly 3% to settle at $4,001 per ounce. U.S. futures, little change with the Dow, the S&P, and the Nasdaq all up by about 0.1% each. Asian markets are down across the board this Tuesday ahead of a meeting between U.S. President Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takachi. South Korea's Kospi down 1.25%, and the ASX 200 is also down 0.4%. Japan's Nikkei slides by 0.1%. And a look at our own markets. See how the PSCI is opened. This Tuesday, it is slightly higher, 5,934. The stock market started the shortened trading week in the red, declining yesterday by nearly 1% to close at its lowest in 7 months. Regina Capital Development Corp says selling pressure persisted throughout the session due to the peso's depreciation against the U.S. dollar, making investors cautious. The broader all-shares index fell 0.7%, with the local counters all in the red. As for the Philippine peso, it opens today unchanged, 58.90 to the dollar. peso logged yesterday its worst finish of the year so far, following dovish comments from the BSP's Monetary Board member Ben Diokno. Monday was the 8th consecutive session that the peso depreciated. The 10-year government bond yields ticked up to 5.985%. In corporate news, BDO Unibank has earned over 63 billion pesos from January to September 2025, up 4% from the same period last year. The bank credits the growth to the sustained performance of its core business segments. For the third quarter alone, BDO's net income rose 6.3% to nearly 23 billion pesos. It said the Philippines is expected to demonstrate continued resilience despite global trade uncertainties from higher tariffs imposed by the U.S. and local political issues, supported by stable inflation and strong domestic consumption. Meanwhile, Union Bank of the Philippines posted a net income of 6.5 billion pesos from January to September, down over 24% from a year ago. That's despite strong results in the third quarter, with profits up 77% to 3.2 billion pesos, driven by solid loan growth and improved margins from its consumer business. The bank attributed the growth to a 9% increase in low-cost current and savings account deposits, which helped reduce funding costs. Meralco is optimistic it can reach its projected core net income by the end of the year amid challenges brought about by bad weather. Meralco's core net income from January to September hit 40 billion pesos, up 14% from the same period last year. Consolidated revenues jumped by 5% to 371 billion pesos, with its electricity units contributing 362 billion pesos and non-electric 9.5 billion pesos. In a statement, Meralco Chairman Manuel V. Pangilinan remains positive that the power distributor can achieve its full-year core profit guidance of 50 billion pesos. Meralco acknowledges that its power generation unit is now growing faster than its distribution business. Generation activities now make up 37% of its core net income on the back of higher earnings from operating plants in the Philippines and Singapore.
We're relying also on the contribution of power generation, which has helped us cover any DU shortfall. Although overall, we're also looking at other than power generation, of course, contributions from our subsidiaries.
Energy sales, though, decreased by 0.4% due to persistent inclement weather. Meralco says it had hoped for the normalization of weather patterns, but heavy rains just keep coming, which affected residences and businesses. And with us now for more is Cristina Ulang, research head at First Metro Investment Corporation. Good seeing you again, Chris. Welcome back to the program.
Hi, good morning, Cathy. Thanks for having me.
All right, so it's a shortened trading week and the peso is at its lowest this year. It's still unchanged just moments ago, and the PSEI at a 7-month low. We saw these in the technical charts even before they happened. So how are the fundamentals looking, Chris?
Well, we have this rate cutting cycle, and it's a very hawkish signal from the BSP, and that's really intended to shore up growth, the GDP growth for 2026. So these are short-term pains, no pain, no gain. So we're seeing the peso slide a bit versus the US dollar, and that's really because of this yield differential, maybe narrowing to 50 basis points between the US dollar and the peso. So this is the market really doing a knee-jerk reaction to this hawkish signal from the BSP of a potential cut by December.
So do you see more pain, Chris? And what sort of a level are we looking at then for the PSEI?
In terms of the inflation, the pass-through is really small, coming from the peso-dollar weakness. But of course, the confidence level is being eroded by the weak peso. And as historically, the PSEI has not really performed well during times of peso weakness. So we may see a bit of erosion further of the PSEI, maybe moving and trying to test the lower end of the trading range. We're now at 5.9 and maybe a bit lower than 5.9 given this new territory for the peso. Not really new, but trying to flirt with 59 and even above 59. But these are, I think, very short term. We will see inflation is still moving in line with expectation. I think that's going to give some assurance. And of course, the Fed also is moving in the direction of cutting, and that's going to further weaken the US dollar. Of course, we have our own fundamental weaknesses in terms of the deficits. Our BOP deficit is still very wide, 5.3 billion US. We have a current account deficit. So these are some of the fundamental weaknesses of the currency, but that's going to be tempered by the fact that the dollar is weakening also.
And also the GDP for the third quarter coming out on November 7th. What sort of a result are we looking at, and to what extent might that be because of the anomalous flood control projects, corruption and governance concerns hounding the economy?
Well, it's nice to hear, to read into the corporate earnings results demonstrating some resiliency on the part of earnings. Like for instance, BDO, which is this is a banking franchise, one of the biggest actually in the country, showing very strong resilience, 5% and meeting expectation for the third quarter. So I think that suggests that our GDP for the third quarter or fourth quarter might just be at the level of the first quarter. Although for next year, we may see a moderation. The BSP has said it's going to not really be in the vicinity of close to 6%, but lower than 5.5%. So I think the moderation is going to happen maybe early next year. And the BSP is really trying to prepare to shore up, to support the economy by way of more rate cuts so that we at least are able to be within the 5.5 or 5.7% GDP growth for 2026.
Also linked to the economy, Meralco. It's just reported earnings, CCNI up by 14%. What do you make of its earnings?
The management is very confident that they're going to be meeting their target, and that the results are again in line. There's no positive surprise even with BDO. They're all in line with expectation. And I think that's a good news already, given the many challenges that we're facing from the governance front, from the climate front, and from the international trade front. So many challenges, and yet our corporates are turning up income that meet expectation. Although there are no fireworks, Meralco really very showing resilience. It's a defensive stock, and I think this is one of the stocks that investors should be buying given the uncertainty all around us because of the high dividends it pays, the steadiness of the cash flow, and you've got to be really defensive these days because of, and I think Meralco gives you that. Given the growth in the power generation, that's really the gem, the gem of the Meralco power gen. the power generation, they're into RE, and of course the transition energy of LNG, of course.
A final point, Chris, any fireworks or the biggest IPO of the year, Manila?
The cornerstone investors are really showing their vote of confidence to this water franchise holder, biggest in the West and West Zone. And I think it's also another defensive play similar to Meralco because dividends could be as high as 6.67%. And earnings growth, if you're going to look at the two-year CAGR, I think it's about 46%. And then the first half also is higher by 12%, 7.4 billion. If you annualize that, that's 14 billion, and that translates to a PE of like 7.5. And this is and if you're going to compare it with regional would have PE of like 12, 16, and as high as 20. So while it may be at a premium versus Manila Water, I think it's really a strong buy for people who want steadiness of the cash flow, strong operating performance, good profitability, and dividend yield.
All right. Well, thank you so much for keeping us up to speed. Christina Ulang of First Metro Investment Corporation. And that is it for Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. Kapatid, we are One News. All sides, all the time. Have a great day ahead.